following program is sponsored by Team Reba of Remax Metro East Side and Eric Osnes of Homebridge Financial Services. Welcome to Open House with Team Reba. Each week, Team Reba will be bringing you a roundup of real estate and mortgage news, along with information about the local Puget Sound region, highlighting some of the best and brightest entertainment options, family events, neighborhood highlights, and local business interviews, so you can feel right at home in the Pacific Northwest.
Welcome once again to Open House with Team Reba. I'm Reba Hass of Team Reba, Remax Metro East Side.
Hope you're all having a good weekend. This is Eric Osnes from Homebridge Financial Home Mortgage.
Well, aren't you so friendly today? Oh my goodness, you're just like super friendly listening to you.
It's a busy time of year and lots going on. And
yeah. Well, good thing that you're in a good mood instead of the other side.
Well, that's right.
That's a positive.
Right. Yeah, just don't talk to me on the last day of the month when everybody wants to close their mortgages.
That's right. Then you are definitely not so pleasant.
All
but you know what? That's because you got to go get stuff done.
We got to get things done.
Right. In fact, I'm kind of excited about what our show's about today because it's about getting stuff done.
That's right.
And getting stuff done right.
As efficiently as possible, I'm assuming.
Yes, as correctly as possible. And with good thought and planning.
That's right.
Well, okay, so I'm going to tell our listeners that you, speaking of good thought and planning, I was very thrilled that because we talked about this on a prior show, you had put together, because you have not only are you a mortgage specialist, but you also do real estate teaching, meaning for people like myself, you teach clock hour classes so that real estate agents can become more educated, and it also goes towards our renewal periods.
Right, continuing education.
Continuing education, yeah. Lots of organizations are required to do CE credit kind of training in different industries. And we had mentioned that you were putting a class together that you said is based on the worst real estate agent ever. Which I thought was hilarious. And I couldn't wait to hear it. And you just recently had me and some of my team members in to audit this class for you before you take it out to, the general real estate public.
Thank you very much for that. Well,
it was all about planning and doing things correctly so as not to muck up your process.
Right. Yes, processes can definitely get mucked up, especially when there is no process.
Yes.
And unfortunately, in the real estate industry,
there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that going on.
Yes,
and,
there is.
From the lending standpoint, when we look at a mortgage, and actually talk about this in the class a bit, we think of it as a manufacturing process. When you get to the end, to the closing, there's definite things that have to be included in that file, in that mortgage.
Yes.
It's credit, it's income, it's analysis, it's the appraisal, it's insurance, it's a title policy. All those things have to be present.
All going on with the real estate process.
Right. All crunched into in a reasonably short amount of time, and relying on people who do not work for you to do their jobs.
Yes.
And so sometimes that can be a little bit like, what's the analogy, herding cats. And
yes, my birth name actually means cat farmer. Katzenmeyer, my mother's maiden name. And I was like, I was literally born to herd cats.
You're living your legacy.
I am.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So maybe that's why we work so well together.
Could be. Could very well be.
Got my tiny little whip.
But I really appreciate you and your team, listening on the class. It always helps to kind of shake things out a little bit when you first write a class and make sure it flows the way it's supposed to flow.
Well, 100%. So part of what I was telling the ladies as we were going back to our office when we completed everything was that you got the best of all worlds, because you got myself with nearly 2 decades of experience and hundreds and hundreds of transactions under my belt. And then you had Nicole, who, while she has a real estate degree and has worked for a builder in the past, she's newer in the residential space. So she has some knowledge base, but not a lot of practical experience.
Sure.
And then we've got Rachel, who is brand spanking new.
Right.
Because and has been through one home purchase, and she's been through our class, actually.
Yeah.
And, I thought that was really interesting that you would get those 3 different levels of experience, because that's exactly who you'll have in a classroom with you when you teach this. So I think we had this great breadth of input and insight, because you needed to make it simple enough that Rachel could get it, but that someone like me isn't like...
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly.
So it was, everyone loved it. They thought it was really, really useful.
Oh, good.
So thank you for putting that together. And I thank you on behalf of the industry, because please go educate.
There you go. Well, I just want to thank the world's worst realtor for providing the content for that class.
You know what? I keep wanting to ask you, is he actually a realtor, though?
No.
Because I bring this up all the time.
R.
Because that's the thing. There's a distinction. You're not supposed to say realtor unless they're actually a member.
Okay.
So there's real estate agents,
and
then there's realtor. So every realtor is a real estate agent, but not every real estate agent is a realtor. And
Correct.
so that
with a
matters.
capital R. Yeah.
It matters.
No, I believe this person is a realtor with a capital R.
I want you to give me their name off air so I can go find out.
I can't do that. I have to protect my sources. You know, there's a...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Not that you and I don't have enough stories that you could use them on some of these examples, but yeah.
Well, no, we definitely. I have some cooking right now, actually, this month. Where
good times.
You know, we have a transaction. It was rush. Let's get this thing done in 2 weeks, and we did. We got it all done, ready. My team is they're rock stars. They're really, really good. So we got this file ready immediately, and now the buyer took a trip to Texas. And all of a sudden...
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And now he's having...
An impromptu one? Or did they know they were going?
And,
what did they do? Find a Groupon?
Well, apparently. I don't know.
Couldn't help themselves?
But now,
Expedia sent out a notice like, oh, the rates for that trip you want have gone down.
Well,
Get it while you can.
I think the feet got cold. And
well, did they cancel?
No, haven't canceled. Just...
Unavailable.
Stalling. Yeah, just delaying.
Well, why can't they sign in Texas?
They could.
Yeah, they totally could.
Yeah, but they don't want to. They're thinking about it now at this point, that now that we've done the huge fire drill to get everything done, you know, very, very quickly. Now it's like, I'm not sure if I want to buy this place or not. And that happens from some, you know, at some, you know, cases people get buyer's remorse or people have second thoughts about it. But
you know, I sort of shame on the real estate agent though, because, you know, I'm trying to think back in 17 years. Have I ever had somebody do that? And usually what happens is we get to that place before we draft the contract or before we send the contract.
Right.
Because we start asking a lot of questions right up front. And that's, you know what, so that leads me into, I'm going to mention for anyone who's been listening to the show before, or if it's your first time listening, we teach these Washington State Housing Finance Commission classes. And in it, we go through a critical thinking process.
Right.
Which is specifically about, because what we start asking people when they come to that class, because we know that they're already looking online. We know that they're like looking at all the fun, pretty pictures that they could find on whatever app it is. But many of them, we do realize, haven't truly thought about what it is they're doing. And in that class, we drill into the thought process and what things really mean to them and what buying this house will do. And you and I both know I've had enough clients, especially if they're like unmarried couples, you know, weirdly enough, some of them have broken up because we make them really, really, really think about this most expensive thing they're about to buy.
All of a sudden it gets real.
It does. And we make them have these hard conversations.
Right.
And that makes a difference on how they buy, where they buy, if they buy, and a whole bunch of other things.
And with whom they buy.
Yeah, and I would rather do that with them up front and either not have a transaction happen and do the right thing for somebody than have what you're dealing with right now.
Right, exactly.
Because that's just a load of hooey.
The process...
that's a technical term.
That is hooey. Is something that we like that word, and we like the word depends.
Yes, my favorite answer in real estate.
Right.
I know. I have Nicole asking me questions all the time. Like she's always looking for an absolute. I mean, God love her. She's on the team and she's always looking for that absolute. And I'm like, you're going to have to learn that there's a whole lot of gray area going on. There's just everything depends on all these other factors.
And if you don't know, gray areas are where the trouble goes to hide.
Yes, I love that you said that during your class.
Yeah.
That was like the most perfect thing. I'm going to probably start saying that more regularly. And although all my friends with gray hair, I'm going to be like, so what you hiding?
Yeah, there you go.
Which I should be careful because our guest has some very nice silver hair in the room.
But enough about my client with the buyer's remorse.
Yes.
So let's tell me what's going on with the market right now.
Well, okay, but can I just mention though? I just talked about our class. I do want to remind our listeners we have February 29th coming up down at the Renton Chamber of Commerce in Renton from 9:30 to 2:30 is our class.
And this class is the official first-time homebuyer class sponsored by the Washington State Housing Finance Commission.
Yes.
This class is a requirement if you plan on taking advantage of special financing programs such as zero down options, which you can actually get if you earn less than $145,000 per year. And this class will also entitle you to discounted cost of PMI, private mortgage insurance, which is required when you put less than a 20% down payment.
Yes.
So it's a
That's
great
very
class.
key. We save you a lot of money.
That's right. Now, this class, there are other ones out there, first-time buyer classes available. We've somewhat taken the original PowerPoint by the state of Washington and chucked it in the bin. You know, over the last 21 years, we've been working on this class, and we've adjusted it, modified it. Of course, we cover all the key topics, but we try and do it in an interesting and fun way. We have game included with the class. We have just a ton of information that's not only for
soon to start adding video.
Yeah, but not just a first-time homebuyer content, but also life skills. You know, especially when we get at issues like credit.
Yeah. We have families that send all of their children.
Yeah.
To our class that. It's a big deal. We're getting to that time. You and I both have done this for so long. We're actually getting into the generational options of this.
I love it. Yeah.
The fact that I'm a great aunt freaks me out. Every time I have to remind myself, a great aunt, not even just aunt.
It goes fast.
But yeah, it does. But it is a class that is 100% something that people will walk away with tons of. I mentioned on other classes we've had, or other shows, we've had listeners to the show who have owned homes who've come to that class and walked away going, wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They learned a lot.
Well, even if it's
so we invite you, go to info@teamreba.com or to teamrebaclasses.com and you can get more information and sign up.
Right.
And we highly recommend, even if you're not in the position it is, if you know people who are thinking about this or you've got, kids or grandkids,
right.
send them. This is a great class. We have a premier class.
I'm going to say even if it's been more than about five years or so since you purchased a home, everything's changed.
Yes.
And so it's good to get brought up to date with all of that.
Yes.
And just
Gotta
get
keep
yourself
up to
all
speed.
educated. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we have to take a real quick break here, pay a couple bills, and we're going to be right back. We're going to be talking some software and software development. What's that going to be all about? Let's
Wouldn't
find
you
out.
like to know?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Open House with Team Reba on AM 1580. The Answer. Now, back to Open House with Team Reba.
Welcome back to Open House with Team Reba. I'm Eric Osnes from Homebridge Financial Home Mortgage.
And I'm Reba Hass from Team Reba.
Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope you're off doing fun things today.
Yeah, because listening to our show is
keeping
totally
an ear
fun.
open to what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, we're going to, you know what? You came from our outro kind of like, we're going to talk about software engineering. It's like, well, yes and no. We're going to talk about it, but we're also going to talk, to what I consider a true expert on the subject. Because our industries are impacted by technology. Our local market area is being impacted by technology, and the whole world is
impacted. It's dominated.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Although there's some stuff that's still kind of ancient out there. I had a conversation with someone recently that was telling me some of the bundled mortgage-backed securities and stuff still go out of financial institutions on spreadsheets.
Right.
And I thought, that's
or anybody
frightening.
that's tried to fill out an expense report.
Yeah.
They're gonna know. They're gonna be cursing the software industry.
Yeah, well, I curse those anyways,
right.
regardless. But it doesn't matter if that's still on hard copy or not. But so I know our listeners are used to us bringing in all manner of nonprofits, businesses, architects, construction, designers, landscape, insurance, all this kind of thing. But, so I saw a notice, I don't know, I think it's a couple of months ago. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. So I have Steve Tockey, who is a principal consultant at a company called Construx locally, which is a software development best practices firm. So Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw you post, I think on social media, that you had just released a new book.
Correct.
Yeah. So I was curious because I'm in the process of trying to put a book together myself, and my initial interest was I wanted to talk to you about like the process, right?
How to publish a book.
Exactly,
Right. Yeah.
exactly. And then the more we kind of talked about it and we met over beers and started talking about what your books were about, I'm like, I want to have this on because I think this is fascinating because anyone who's listened to the show for a while knows that I worked in tech before I came into this industry. And so I still keep a pulse on it. And in fact, even on my way to the show today, I'm a Zillow Premier agent, and I was talking to my sales rep there about technology I need from them to keep my team safe and to help me compete against one of my bigger competitors. It's also a local company. I don't want to get into their names, but it starts with an R. Because they do a lot of technology around it, right? And so I'm constantly trying to keep an eye on what's happening. And when you started showing me what your books were about, I was just fascinated. So tell our listeners a little bit about the books that you've written and maybe a little bit, because you shared this with me and I just thought it was fantastic, and then we went off into a whole bunch of other conversation about it. So can you give us a brief synopsis, or does it take too long?
Well, I can try to put something together.
Okay.
I mean, I got to try and not come across as too negative about our industry. However,
Right.
I've already said many times that we're an industry mostly of highly paid amateurs.
Right. Well, and your company is meant to go out and help companies fix their processes around engineering.
Exactly.
Right. So
Right.
that's why I consider you like premier, because if other tech companies are hiring your company to come fix their problems, clearly you have some good answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start first with you have a premise, right? Of the simple theory behind engineering on software.
Right. And so there are a lot of people around the planet who would use the job title software engineer without having a clue of what it actually means to be a software engineer. Now, my dad was an electrical engineer. My next younger sister is an electrical engineer, and my youngest sister is a civil engineer. And so engineering kind of runs in our family.
Those
love a family
holiday
of nerds.
gatherings are pretty interesting.
Yeah. They probably are.
Oh, they can be.
Yeah.
But the term engineer actually in many of the states in the U.S. is actually a reserved term, much like you can't call yourself a capital R realtor unless
Right.
you're licensed.
Right.
In a number of the states in the U.S., Texas as an example, you cannot call yourself an engineer without being licensed by the state.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And there are
Okay.
educational requirements, et cetera. And one of my favorite examples of being an engineer is that you take on personal liability for the work that you do. So if the work that you do causes
Right.
any damage to anybody, you are personally liable for that work. I mean,
Right.
my youngest sister, the civil engineer, she designs roads and bridges.
Right. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
the bridge falls down, they're going after her. They're not going after the company she works for. They're going after her. She took on personal liability for.
Yeah, because architects are like that too, aren't they?
Yeah,
To a degree.
to a degree. It depends on whether or not the work is. The differentiator here is, are you exposing the unknowing public to risk? So if it's a
Okay.
public building,
Right.
then very definitely. But if it's like a house, for
Right, yeah,
example,
and that's
then
what I
it's-
mean on a public scale, because you mentioned
Yeah.
like bridges and roads and things like
Right,
that. So yeah, I'm thinking
and-
like high rises and things of that
yeah.
nature.
And how much software is exposed to the the unknowing public. That in the second book, there's a whole section of places where software has caused harm to people. Now, if you ever take the time to read an actual end user license agreement, they're basically saying, look,
We're not liable.
this is at,
Yeah.
at your risk. If there's a problem,
Oh,
it's your
yeah.
problem. It's not our problem.
Yeah.
And okay, but if it's a heart monitor, or if it's software that's flying an airplane, or if it's your bank, I mean,
Right.
there's a huge amount of software out there.
Or places like Experian that got hacked and gave everyone's personal data away. Yeah. There's some issues. Yeah. There's stuff out there. So, okay. So you have this, formula that you say should be applied. So when we're talking about the engineering, you're saying that, there's there's formulas applied in engineering, unless I'm like jumping in too soon.
No. If one wants to use the word engineer, one should use it in a way that the engineers that are already recognized as engineers use it. And so there's an organization in the U.S. called the Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology, ABET.
Okay.
So any university that wants to offer a degree program in, quote, engineering should be ABET accredited. I mean, so there's, again, it's like Capital R Realtor. An ABET accredited engineering degree has a higher standing than a non-ABET accredited engineering degree.
Got it.
And so that's one of the organizations, at least in the U.S., that are in control of what engineering means. And so they have a paragraph-long definition about using science and mathematics and practice to solve real-world problems economically. And so what I've done is basically boiled that down to a single equation. And the equation is essentially that engineering can be defined as using, on the one hand, theory, and on another hand, practice, but the third hand, which we don't have, is the whole idea of economics. I mean, if you're going to get a chemical engineering degree or a civil engineering degree, you're forced to take classes in economics, economic decision making. Engineering economy has been referred to as the idea that any idiot can do with $1 what an engineer can do with a dime.
Okay.
You're trying to solve the problem, but solve it in a cost-effective way.
Right.
And so how could you say that you're engineering if you're not basing your decisions on the economics, which is really book number 1 that came out in 2005, Return on Software.
So how do you so when you're talking about economics, you're talking about are you talking about the amount of time that goes into developing, let's say, successful software? Or are you talking about the ultimate, result that software will achieve?
Well, it's both, because it comes down to essentially, cost-benefit analysis, rate of return,
Sure.
Right.
Which depends not only on how much you had to spend to get there, but how much you got back in return for that.
Right. And that used to be the argument when I was in tech all the time. And that's how, at one point, I sold a JDBC driver to SQL Server at Microsoft, because they wanted to say, oh, well, we have all these great developers and we can do this ourselves. And I said, well, my company's been here 20 years and we've spent all this much money and we've done this much testing and we have all of these things available. You would have to scale out and put this many resources. And it was one of those, like, for the minimal licensing fee we're going to give you on this, why in the world, other than ego,
Exactly.
would you go the other direction?
Right.
And we did successfully do that at the time, and it was useful because it was valuable on both sides, because we needed to have that, because JDBC at the time was new, and we had people who were popping up all over, just like 1-2 software designer type people, just all over. I mean, half the time we'd look at what the address was of a company, quote, air quote, company, and it was like some dude's house, out in the sticks with his kids' toys in the yard and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, that looks valid. And then we're looking at the company I worked for that had a storied history of building these things correctly. And I see that all the time. In fact, that was one of the things that drove me nuts working in tech, was you could take one problem and make 1,000 solutions for it, but most of them were very inelegant.
And uneconomical.
Yes.
Right.
And so, I mean, really, to me, like when I started hearing about what your book was about and the books, I thought, oh my gosh, this is
here comes the cavalry to save the day.
Yeah. I was like, oh my
hopes.
goodness, why wouldn't everybody read these? And that was like the next part of the conversation for me with you was, well, who is getting access to these books and how are they being presented and sold? Right?
Well, I mean, the books are available on Amazon.com, but in terms of how they're being marketed, it's kind of just by word of mouth at this point.
Right. And so, I mean, the companies that Construx works with,
right,
are they people who would have like their staff read this kind of stuff?
Today, that's the goal, and some companies have bought copies either for their library or for the individuals. But if you kind of read between the lines between both of the books, I mean, the first book, the economics book, is actually written as a university textbook.
Okay, because they seemed like textbooks to me, but
Yeah.
I mean, and they're of the size of a typical software book, but but they're also actually a fairly easy read as you start to go through. I mean, yes, they get into complexities, but it's an easy read. So I want to get into more of that when we get back on after the break, and I'm sure my economics guy over here is going to have more questions about what this does to help benefit companies who implement these kinds of systems, right? So we're going to be right back with more at Open House with Team Reba with Steve Tockey from Construx.
Open House with Team Reba on AM 1590. The Answer. Now, back to Open House with Team Reba.
Welcome back to Open House with Team Reba. I'm Reba Haas of Team Reba, Remax Metro East Side.
And I'm Eric Osnes from Home Bridge Financial Home Mortgage. And we've got Steve Tockey with us from Construx Software Development. And Steve, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Java.
Java who?
That's my joke. You notice that big
That's
long
the
pause?
limit? Yeah, because you were trying to come up with something.
What can I say? So, no,
Oh, my gosh.
I guess my point is I have software on my laptop sitting in front of me that I hate with a passion because it doesn't work right, or it works one way one time and a different way another time, and when I can't go back, I gotta start all over from the beginning, where it should just have a button that says take me back to the last place, and I imagine that's kind of something that might fall under your realm, is figuring out ways to avoid those frustrations so that the worker can work more efficiently, more economically.
Right. Yeah, and sort of to tie this back actually into the real estate topic, I've been building code for other people since 1977. But one of the most eye-opening experiences in my whole entire career, I used to work at Boeing, and then I left Boeing to go work for a company called Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Real estate house price differences essentially meant that I had to custom build a house in Iowa. The normal cost of a house was less than what I had sold the house here for.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to get stuck with capital gains, and so the only way to do that was to build a custom
nice
house. And it was a really nice house.
Yeah.
But my point was that in my career of building very expensive things for other people using their money, now I'm on the other side of the fence. That now somebody else is building something very expensive for me using my money, and I want to make sure they get it right. And so the tie-in to software is quite often the people that are building the software that you're saddled with using are not the people who use it. If these people had to use this code on a daily basis, it would not be the mess that it is.
Yeah, when I first, and I love Remax for a number of reasons, but I will tell you, when I first joined their organization in 2003, you could tell. Like, they had their CRM and other back-end, systems that we were supposed to use. And I thought, well, no wonder not enough of the agents are utilizing their technology, because it was junk. You could tell it was made by developers for developers and not for the end user. And, that's one of the things. In fact, I think this is great. Actually, I'm kind of glad you're here because I just had a conversation earlier this week where my marketing manager is asking to shift his schedule because he wants to take a UX class, a user experience class. And part of the reason some of these real estate websites or real estate related websites are beating out the traditional vendors out there like Remax, although much of that is changing, it's because they're really good at building that user experience. Doesn't mean they're necessarily changing, what happens actually in the transaction. Right. But they're doing this user experience where people feel like things are simple and easy. And that's where, like the people who come to our classes, they're seeing the simple, pretty part so far. That's like, oh yeah. But when you dive into it, you're like, yeah, those people, they're really not helping the transaction itself.
Yeah, well,
it's all about, they're just now finally figuring out like it's about conversion of leads and opportunity.
Right. But
and that's it.
Plugging a different book, there's a guy, I believe his name was Alan Cooper, but he wrote a book called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Oh, it's a classic book. It's if you let developers define user interfaces, you get user interfaces that are really easy to build, but a pain to use.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you let a user experience expert define a user interface, it's a usable interface, but boy, is it a pain for the developers to build.
Sure.
Maybe that's why no one ever hires me as a consultant. Because I went on
They're
for
far
years.
too expensive.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, so that, again, was my conversation with Zillow today, because one of the concerns that we have in our industry is safety, because we're being asked to answer a click-to-show button, and I have to send myself or my other licensee out into the world to meet a random person. And we actually just got into an argument with a woman. This has all happened since you and I had our beers.
Right.
We got in an argument with a woman over text because we asked her to send us a simple, just like, can you send us a photo ID of some sort to prove who you are? And we could see who you are, and we know that your name matches the stuff. And she started to claim that she worked in security, technology security, and said, no, I'm not going to send that to you. Then she threatened to try and turn me into the Realtors Organization for some kind of stupid ethics violation. I'm like, this doesn't fall under that.
Right.
And then we went and we said, okay, well, that's fine. Let's find an alternate for you. That's fine. We can meet you in person. We went through all these other iterations of trying to find a way that would make her comfortable. And then she wanted to slam, we have a privacy policy, but we don't always send it out when someone just asks to go see a property. Like, we'll share it with them when we are handing over a booklet of our, how to work with us stuff. And so we went through this whole thing. So we're re-looking at our processes. But I thought, Zillow has agents who pay for their service all over in Canada and the United States. And we all work for different kinds of companies. And so I went to my other competitor because we started doing the photo ID on purpose because we were mimicking what another firm did, because they also have the click to show button. And some of my old clients, thinking I was too busy, didn't call me instead and did that. And then, things changed. Well, so I do, espionage on my competition. Duh. Who should, why not? And so we went and we saw that they had changed their process. And now they're doing this phone verification, authentication piece. And so we were like, okay. So I'm having a conversation earlier this week with my Zillow rep saying, I would like to request, and I want you to take it to management, I need you guys to add this. Because there's no way you can ask every brokerage that does business with you to do it themselves. But you guys, if you're going to have us doing this, then I'm going to ask you to keep us safe, because there's been just in the last couple of weeks another high profile death of a real estate agent. And it happens all the time. We either get attacked, because we've mentioned this before, that when Eric and I are teaching our class, I've started asking the people in the room, how much do you think the average real estate agent makes? And I'll start off, I said, do you think we all make over six figure?
No.
And every hand goes up in the room. They believe that every real estate agent makes $100K or more. And the truth of the matter is, nationally, it's $46,000 a year before expenses. And so, these people are told to, look like you're successful, do glamour photos, do all these, drive a fancy car even if you can't afford it, which, I've never bought into any of that baloney. But it's frustrating, because that's why we get targeted, because people think that we have all these, unlimited resources available to us. And so I'm having a very serious conversation with an organization saying, you're not even thinking about my safety. And I need you to, because you're creating a monster of sending people out to meet total strangers.
So, Steve, from a development standpoint, how would you fit into that, like that, a problem like that?
Well, I think there's two ways. I mean, fundamentally, it comes down to the ethics. Is it really ethical to be exposing agents that way? And it's really not. But getting back to the economics, I mean, how expensive is it going to be to put in some facility which does this? And it's not going to be cheap by any stretch. But now, on the other hand, if you don't put it in, you, the company, are now exposing yourself to a liability suit.
Exactly.
If something bad does happen.
Precisely.
Now, what's the cost
and
of
possibly losing customers because people feel unsafe and are like,
Right.
no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, and this is where the economic analysis comes in. Is it in our best interest to do this or to do something else?
Right.
And if it seems to me fairly much a no-brainer that when you're dealing with the kind of money that would be involved in a liability suit, that's it. No, let's jump on this one as quickly as possible.
Right.
So, Steve, with your company, with Construx, then I'm looking at your website and I see that you do a whole bunch of different things. There's software development assessments, design and code evaluations, Scrum tune-up, whatever that is.
That sounds like a fishing thing for you.
Like a rugby match or something.
Oh, yeah.
But so how do you approach that? Tell me how that works when you're dealing with businesses.
Well, the Scrum tune-up specifically, or just in
just
general?
like all the services.
A company calls you up, or you're working with a company, and they're like, we got problems with our software, and we have this problem, we have that problem. You have a team that goes in, or how do you start that process?
It's usually an individual. I mean, a lot of organizations do know what their problems are. In fact, it's every company, every software organization does like to think that they're unique, and to some extent they are unique, but there's some really, really generic problems that are involved here.
Such as?
High up on the list, number one is vague, ambiguous, incomplete requirements. The people that are telling you about what software they want you to write have not really thought it out themselves. So they're not very clear about what they want. And insofar as your code is supposed to provide them that service that they want, if they're not clear about that, then your code has to be equally unclear. So problem number one, far and away, is crappy requirements. Problem number two.
Technical term.
Yeah. Well, no, what was the term you used earlier?
Yeah.
Bunch of hooey or something else.
Yeah. Hooey requirements. Yeah.
Hooey in, hooey out.
Yeah. We have a fair amount of problems in the industry with basically project management. How do we estimate the project? How do we track the project?
Yeah.
How do we make sure the project is proceeding on time? We have a lot of problems with people not paying attention to quality. I mean, the industry seems to operate under this mistaken notion that you can test the quality into the code after you've written it. And no, that's, the horse has already left that barn. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to get the quality in at that point. And so a lot of what we're dealing with are ways of making sure that the quality is there before the code is actually written. Quality and requirements, quality and design.
And I love that because, Eric and I, we're always talking about what's our end goal and then how do we back into that, right? Go back into every little step that's part of it. And then I know in my team, we're constantly iterating the process. If we find something, we fix it. Because we try and do the best we can to examine and think of all the things that could happen. But frequently, there's always that like, oh God, I never saw that coming, but for the most part, we have like the base requirements. But I know we've got more that we can talk about as we get into the next and final segment of this. You never thought this would be so exciting, did you?
That's right. So we're going to take a quick break. If you've got to tune up your Scrum, go off and get that taken care of. We're going to be right back. More Open House with Team Reba.
Do they have wipes for that? We'll find out.
Open House with Team Reba on AM 1590. The Answer. Now, back to Open House with Team Reba.
Welcome back to Open House with Team Reba. I'm Eric Osnes from Homebridge Financial.
And Team Reba. Oh, actually, Reba Hess from Team Reba. Oh my gosh, I was the one who screwed it up this time. Usually it's you.
This is a rare day. I'm going to go out and buy a lotto ticket.
I know you should because I haven't. You've only. Well, we're mostly both saying the right. Is it Construx or Construct? How do you guys pronounce it?
Well, most of us call it Construx,
okay.
But there are a couple of people in the company that do call it Construx. And so
well, they're just wrong.
I don't know. Does it matter?
Yeah. So, we have, again, for our listeners, we have Steve Tockey, who's a principal consultant at Construx. And again, thank you very much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
So if anyone's gone and cleaned out their Scrum or whatever you said that was, and now we're back. So I'm so curious, Eric. What other kinds of questions do you have? Because I had a chance to ask Steve a lot of questions, but this is a chance where we both get to interview somebody, and I love because you have that economics background, and I thought you would really, given what the simple formula is that he's got about all this, I figured you'd just be like all on it.
Well, I am very intrigued by that, just in how you can go about analyzing such a complex, subject. And put it down. I mean, do you have a mathematical formula, or you're going to go into a you're looking at new software, some type of a project, and you have to determine, as you mentioned, what's my return on investment for this project?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that there's actually, again, a real estate tie-in there with the house in Iowa. The way most organizations develop software today, because they're not approaching it from the direction it needs to be approached, it's a very chaotic process. How long is it going to take us to do this?
Right.
I
How
don't
many
know.
man hours?
Yeah, it'll be done when it's done.
Right.
When I was, again, in Iowa and having to custom build the house, the target was I need to spend this much money to avoid capital gains. And so now the obvious question is, how big of the house do I need in order to spend this amount of money?
Right. Which that's a different problem today. Capital gains is treated completely different than that particular
but
time.
for your analogy,
but for your analogy, I totally get it. I just want to make our listeners know, that's not how it works today.
So I was talking with a building contractor, and he said, "Oh, that's easy, $95 a square foot." Now, some of the square feet in the house cost more than that, and some of the cost less than that.
Yeah, on average, because kitchens and bathrooms always are more than just bedrooms
and I think
space.
At that time, so many years ago, it ended up being $120 per square foot main floor, and like $65 for a square foot off main floor. But if you average that out, it ends up being the $95 over the whole house. But then that's based on having a blueprint for the house. How many square feet is in this house?
What features, what kinds of upgrades and/or,
which is a great lead-in to the second book, which is literally blueprinting software.
Okay, yeah.
You want software that does X. Well, independent of the technology that's going to be used, there's the business, if I could call it, of X. There's a set of policies that need to be enforced.
Sure.
If you're a bank, what does it mean to be a bank customer? What does it mean to be a bank account? Can a customer not have an account? Can an account not have a customer? These are all policies that the software that needs to be built needs to enforce. The job of the software is to enforce this policy. And there are processes that the software is supposed to carry out. What does it mean to put money into an account? What does it mean to take money out? What does it mean to move money from one account to another? And so the second book is really focused on an idea of a blueprinting language for policies and processes, so that, again, before the house was built, I wanted to make darn sure that this is the house that I want to pay this much money for. And so there were a lot of hours spent poring over these engineering drawings of the house to say, okay, yeah, I like that. Can we make this room a little bit bigger? Can we move this here? Because it's very expensive to change the house after it's been built. But it's really cheap to change the house before it's been built. Exactly the same thing happens in software.
Yeah, I love it. You have all these schematics in here that are showing some of the things that you're describing right now. I love it.
Yeah, they're just policy and process drawings. They're not
So you're giving basically an architecture that says if you follow this plan, you'll be more efficient with your software development. You'll be more economical.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. One of the things that the industry as a whole doesn't understand is that there's a very important measure that you should be measuring on your projects. If you only measure one thing, the thing that you should be measuring is something called rework. Out of 100 labor hours that your people are spending, how many of those labor hours are fixing things that got broken earlier? And we've actually measured rework in 5 different organizations around the planet. And when we measured rework, it averaged 61%.
Holy cow!
I know, isn't that shocking?
I think I heard somewhere that that rework or debugging is kind of the analogy is you're the detective in a crime drama, but you're also the murderer.
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh. Well, it's accurate, but ouch.
Yeah, I mean, the joke is that the typical way of developing software today is to start with a blank screen. Now, that's obviously wrong. Debug it.
Yeah.
And so you're debugging from day one.
Oh, yeah.
What is your target? What does right mean? And if we can come up with a drawing that expresses what right means and get an agreement between the people for whom the software is being built and the people that are building the software about what right means, then you cut down immensely on the amount of rework.
Yeah.
Now, I have to admit that we weren't measuring rework, but on several of the projects that we've done this way, that if I had to estimate rework, I'd say it's easily under 10%.
Interesting.
Wow.
What's your greatest success story with some of the clients that you've worked with?
Well, in terms of saving them money or size of system built, or
I'd say maybe a couple examples, but I'm thinking in terms of saving money, mostly.
Well, I want to hear that, and then also like how should organizations get these books so that they can do that?
Yeah, we'll get to that for sure.
Well, how you get the book is just go to Amazon.com.
Right,
and,
but but I feel like there's almost like a groundswell of consumer support that should be like, we would like for you to all start using this, please.
Yeah.
Well, because I want to, one of my goals is to have people hear this, and if hey, if you're working at one of these tech firms, check these out. Check out your company, but check out the books for certain.
Right.
And then if you're in the educational environment, then absolutely, please, or if you're someone who's looking to get into this, please come and read these books. But yeah, go ahead and answer Eric's question, though.
So without dropping names of the organization inside of which this all happened, basically you got a series of 3 projects that are all related, but very, very high-tech products. And as the products are being created, you want to do some testing of the products to make sure the products are being put together correctly. And so the term is automated test equipment, which in this particular case is about the size of a small Toyota truck. And what you do is you wheel this truck up next to the thing, you plug it in, and this machine exercises the thing that's being built and will tell you if it's being built correctly. Now, for various reasons, in all 3 of these projects at the same company, essentially, the project team that was originally responsible for doing the projects had wasted the first half of the project. I mean, for example, you have a 2.5-year project to build this automated test equipment. And the team is surfing the web and they're playing games and they're not doing software. And so halfway through the project, somebody says, hey, how are we doing on building the software? And somebody else says, software? What software? And so I get called in a panic. Hey, we're in a world of hurt here. We have to do a 2.5-year project in a year and a quarter because we've essentially wasted the first year and a quarter. And in all of these cases, we delivered early.
That's awesome.
And so the problem here really boils down to that the 2.5-year estimate was based on an implicit assumption of 60% rework.
Got it.
Really?
Yeah, because this is the normal rate at which we build software. We would need to build this software. It's going to take us 2.5 years.
Wow.
Without realizing that 60% of that is rework.
Definitely some areas where we can certainly improve that efficiency.
And so we're essentially just cutting the rework out.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, love to have had you on today, Steve. Real pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to put
Thank
your
you.
contact information, everything up on the website. And hopefully we can get you back in again, figure out what that Scrum thing is all about.
Yes. Construx.com is where you can find them.
Thank you for listening to Open House with Team Reba. To contact us, visit Team Reba at RE/MAX Metro Eastside on Facebook or email info@teamreba.com. Join us again next Saturday afternoon at 2 for more Open House with Team Reba here on AM 1590. The Answer. The preceding program was sponsored by Team Reba of RE/MAX Metro Eastside and Eric Osnes of Homebridge Financial Services.